models, and also Google's vision to help you overcome those challenges and hopefully kind of inspire you guys a little bit to become super, super successful. I think that sort of summarizes what I'm going to talk about. So, how many of you guys are in this industry to make the best game possible? Can you raise your hand, please? Okay, most of you want to make the best games possible, right? How many of you are in this industry to make as much money as possible? More or less the same amount, okay. Okay, now, both things should be together, all right? And it's very simple. Many of the people that are in the industry, in my experience, are in it because they love making games. And not only that, one of the best moments in the life of every games developer is you're walking down the street and you see someone playing a game in a mobile phone and it happens to be your game. Now, damn, that feels really, really good, right? Just someone, randomly, one person on the street, and you see them smiling and having fun and looking at your game and playing it, right? And it feels really, really good. And that's fantastic. But what happens if, you have millions of people like that person that are super happy playing your game, but you can't make enough money to make the next best great game? You know the story, right? I don't know how many of you were in the previous keynote by Bob Bates, and he mentioned something along those lines, right? He mentioned, okay, so at that point you become that games developer that says, my best time was behind me, was in the past. In reality, what you want to do is build a sustainable, big business, right? Where by making great games, making millions of people happy, millions of people that play those games happy, right? And making sure that at the same time you're making as much money from those games as possible to ensure that you continue building your business, that you can continue hiring more developers, making the next great games. And this is something on the screen that our chairman on the board, our previous CEO, said quite famously, right? These days, Google is very well known for search, obviously, Gmail, but also crazy ideas like, cars that don't have a driver, or balloons that float around the world, providing connectivity in different countries. Google Glass. I was reading this morning about this technology, nano something. Basically, we will swallow as a pill, right? And we'll look for illnesses in our bodies. So our Google X lab is working on it. There is one common denominator to all of these things. Or two, actually. All of them are going to solve problems in the world. But most importantly, in order to develop those solutions to those big problems in the world, you need money. The same applies to games. So as I say, Eric Schmidt very famously recently said that revenue solves all known problems. You may or may not be in the games industry to make money, but it is something that you need to do. It's a rather important thing that you need to do to really develop your ambitions, develop your vision. Okay? So I'm glad to see that you guys as game developers are not very shy about admitting that you're here in this industry to make money. That's great. You should stay in this session. If you want to make great games, I might not be the best example. I might not be the best inspiration for you guys. All right, so we have quite a few people in the audience today, right? And what we're seeing in the industry is a couple of things, right? The industry is maybe 30, 40 years old. This is possibly, at the moment, we're witnessing the most revolutionizing changes that have ever happened in the industry. And those changes are happening for a very simple reason. The move to mobile. Now let's be honest. India, great country. Traditional games industry, not much. So now that you guys are building the games industry in India for the future, your platform of choice is going to be mobile platforms. That's where you're building it. Okay? And when I talk about mobile platforms, we define those at the moment as smartphones, tablets, but in reality, we're seeing some trends in the world, right, regarding that everything, all the technology is becoming mobile. So I saw a video a few weeks ago of someone that clearly didn't have much, that clearly had much time in his hands, had actually ported Flappy Birds into a Motorola 360 watch. So you could actually play Flappy Birds on your wearable device. Great user experience, I'm not so sure. But clearly there's something going on there, right? I just showed you a picture of Google Glass. There's some developers already in a few countries working on games for Google Glass. I'm particularly quite excited about that. Very early days, obviously, right? But the whole industry is becoming mobile. So when you guys are building the games industry for India, which is what you are all doing at the moment, right? And hopefully we can help you. We'll talk about that in a moment. You're looking at smartphones, you're looking at tablets, but you also have to think about what comes after. A lot of you are probably thinking about your businesses in two different ways. One of them is, how can I be very successful in India, but how can I be very successful abroad as well? How can I take my game to the US, to Japan, to Southeast Asia, to Europe, right? And that's a good thing about the mobile games business that you are building. The reality is mobile games are global by nature. So that offers a lot of different kind of challenges, but also opportunities for you guys. There's a few ways that you can monetize games at the moment, right? In my opinion, none of them is perfect, and you all have to figure out which one is best for your specific product, for your specific audience, for your geographic footprint. I'm going to be talking about a couple of those today. I'm not going to talk too much about paid downloads. I'm going to focus a little bit more on in-app purchases and also advertising. But let's just take one premise. As we determined a moment ago, all of you, if not most of you, because there were a few hands in there that that people didn't raise, right? Most of you are here to make money. Okay? So hopefully I can inspire you a little bit in terms of how to make money. Let's start with a couple of insights. Paid apps used to be a key monetization method on mobile. So why doesn't everyone create paid apps anymore? The users are not there. As you can see in this example from the US, paid apps get less than 1/10 the number of downloads of free apps. Every app is unique, so it makes perfect sense for some to be paid. But free-to-play is huge, and it is on the rise. According to Gartner, free will account for 93% of all downloads, of all app downloads next year. 93%. There's another take. This is another take on the same question, but this is specific to games. So we're excluding non-gaming apps, right? What you guys are interested in. From a study we did with Park Associates last year, we know that in-app purchases account for roughly 90% of all user payments. The other 10% or so would be money paid for downloads of games that are not free. And this refers to user payments only. So in-app purchase expenditure is king, and it is growing. Okay? Now I'm conscious that at this point in time, right, in-app purchases may not be that big in India, right, from the perspective of the fact that this is a nascent industry. Right? But I'm going back to the fact that your mobile game business can be global from the get-go. So this is something important for you to keep in mind. Some of you may have seen this slide before, and I hope it's not too small on this screen. Oh yeah, it is, right? Yeah, okay, no one can read it, fantastic. So don't worry about that. I will make the presentation, the deck available to the conference organizers, and you can download it. So. One of the most important questions to ask yourself is, if you're trying to build and grow a games business from the perspective of in-app purchases, how many users actually spend and how much? And there's different reports, but most of them coincide on in-app purchases. But most of them coincide that in-app purchases actually are done by a really small amount of all users. Right? Possibly as low as 2 to 6% of the total mobile gamers account for 95% of all payments. Think about that. 2 to 6% of all users, of all gamers, account for 95% of all payments. So you are all competing to get the attention of that 2 to 6%. Those of you who were in the previous session, right, would draw some similarities in here with the data I am sharing at the moment. So we're actually, a good thing, of course, is that that small number, that percentage, right, in absolute terms is growing very fast, and that's good. But the amount of users, the amount of gamers is not infinite. In addition, as any of you who are already working on or using in-app purchases as a business model, between 1 and 3% of the users actually spend money within games. Right? So if you have a game, you use in-app purchases, you probably know that around 1 to 3% of users actually play. actually pay for in-game purchases. And this is actually, I have my own comparison with this. I referred previously to my last job with Electronic Arts a few years ago, when I was releasing free-to-play desktop games in Southeast Asia. At that time, I was able to get 5% of people to pay me. And I thought that was low. We have actually gone even lower since then, right? So there's a trend here. Now, there's a bit of an over-reliance on this model, in my opinion. And for those of you, right, anyone that has mobile games on the App Store or the Play Store, you know how difficult it is to get to the top of the top grossing charts. And to a certain extent, part of the challenge there is, the reason for that is because of how the in-app purchase model works. Now, Todd Hooper, who is the VP of Online Services at Unity, and I'm sure some of you are using the Unity engine. It's a great engine. So he works at Unity, and at the Mobile Games Forum in Seattle a couple of weeks ago, he shared that for mobile games developed in Unity, the number of users, the percentage of users paying is actually 0.7%. That's the average. And they know, they have this data, obviously, right? Because they can collect this data from all the developers that are using the Unity Games engine. So the actual number is 0.7%. Now, here's a thought. If you really want to grow your business, do you think you can rely on that 1 to 3% of users that actually pay? Thank you. That was the answer I was looking for. Thank you very much. So you probably cannot do it, right? I mean, if you're Supercell, or you're King, fantastic, good for you. You're doing very well, right? And you're probably even reaching more than 3% of the users. Well done.